One of our members is running a little late, so we're gonna hold off for 10 minutes so we can get here, if that's okay with everybody. Sorry about that.
You may want to gavel out so that.
Close.
Gavel out, gavel out, gaveling out. To the Zoning Board of Appeals. Now we have our full board. Let's see. Please silence cell phones and note that this meeting is being taped by FCTV. Any private party recording this hearing, is there any private party recording this hearing? If so, please step up to the podium and request permission. I'll introduce the board and the staff. On our far right is Mark Finneran, he's a regular member. Scott Peterson, regular member. Frank Duffy, to my right, is clerk. I'm Suzanne Murphy, chair. And we have on my left Tony Petrucci, an associate member. We have Noreen Stockman on the left of the two people, zoning administrator, and Ashley DeMello. Let's see, any person seeking to make a public statement on anything not before the board tonight shall have 2 minutes to speak. The board will not comment at this time. The Zoning Board of Appeals is charged with applying the state zoning statutes as well as the town zoning bylaws in reviewing and voting on any application. All decisions are made through the public hearing process. Our goal is to hear testimony from the applicants and the public and to allow a full and fair discussion of the project prior to closing the hearing process and reaching a decision. Number one, to begin each hearing, the clerk will read the public announcement for the hearing and read pertinent information from the file. Number two, the applicant or the applicant's representative will then have 15 minutes to make a presentation, but the time may be extended by the vote of the board. 3, the board will then question the applicant. And 4, next, the public will be invited to comment. Comments will be limited to 2 minutes and will be strictly related to the proposal. All members of the public wishing to speak should wait to be recognized by the chair, should come to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Please speak into the microphone. It will amplify your voice and record audio for the FCTV viewers. Is there anyone that wants to make a public statement tonight? I see no hands. So we'll go right to our two hearings. They're both continuations, so it will not be read in. And so we'll start with 17 Walker. And tonight we are going to go over the peer review for 17 Walker. And I don't know if you want me,
We have our peer engineer here.
and we have Mr. Cook, come on up. You want to just go over this with us, like, kind of briefly?
Sure. So for the record, Matt Cody, Beals and Thomas, we're the peer review engineer on behalf of the board for this project. We issued our letter August 20th. We did receive a response from the applicant yesterday, so we haven't had a chance to thoroughly go through it all and vet all the responses, but I was able to read through it quickly today. So they were requesting several waivers, dimensional waivers for like lot width and building coverage, setbacks, building heights, number of stories. But being in the downtown, just around the corner here, that's fairly typical of all the buildings, that not a lot of them have setbacks, or, you know, there's buildings of similar heights in the area, so none of those are particularly concerning. But again, we'll go through that in more detail when we get a chance. They were also requesting some procedural waivers, just to shift the responsibility for like site plan review and historical commission. There's a sewer component that needs to be reviewed. You know, just shifting those typical responsibilities from local boards to this process. So again, no concerns there. Just, you know, more procedural waivers. A couple of the other issues. So again, just going through it quickly. The stormwater. Again, the building essentially takes up the entire lot. So they are capturing the roof area, and they're gonna bring that down into the garage area, which then becomes like a plumbing code concern, which would be dealt with. So it seems like what they've done isn't necessarily something that's gonna work. But again, that could be worked out during the, you know, the because there's gonna be, what they have in the basement is a catch basin, or in the garage, I say basement, it's all ground level. There's a catch basin there, so essentially like a floor drain. That floor, per the plumbing code, that floor drain would need to be connected to the sewer, and not necessarily drainage. So they're just, and right now they have it all, it's just kind of one combined system. So just have to separate the stuff that's coming off the roof from that catch basin in the garage. Not something that's gonna be a huge deal, but just something we wanted to note at this point. And again, being part of the building code, that would all go towards the building permit. I mean, we were typically looking at what's going on outside the building, not in it, at this stage. So there's that. They did provide a photometric plan that again, with the building essentially taking up the whole lot. The lights that'll be on that building are, cascading over the property lines, which typically is something that would be of concern, but again, kind of being in the downtown district, it's not as concerning, but something we just wanted to know. A landscape plan was not provided. Some of the architectural plans did note some green space, so we kind of questioned what was going on, the limited space that is left. So we're looking for some clarification on that. It doesn't sound like there will be any. It sounds like everything will be a hardscape around the building. But again, we'll go through that in more detail when we get a chance. And then the other concern was the parking within the building. It's going to be fairly tight. And some of those in the surrounding streets around it are tight as far as like making turns in and out. Beals and Thomas doesn't have any traffic engineers on staff, but we just noted that it is going to be somewhat congested in that garage, per what we typically see. But again, just something. Again, we'll go through in more detail when we get a better chance to look at it again. So with that, those were the kind of the highlights. If there's any questions at this point, again, like we only got this stuff yesterday, so we'll go through it in more detail, but that's kind of where we stand at this point.
The floor drain with everything from the roof, I mean, they're obviously not gonna let them put that into the sewer.
Correct. Well, the floor drain would go into the sewer. They're gonna have to separate the roof from it all being like one kind of combined system. Basically, they're proposing some like dry well kind of leaching pits underneath the garage, so the roof can go to those. It's just that catch basin / floor drain can't be connected to the same system.
And there'll be no issue with the ground being able to accept that water.
Not based on what they've shown. Like the groundwater's down quite a ways.
Really? How far?
Off the top of my head, I don't recall, but enough.
More than 10 feet?
Yeah. And just, and again, with the, as far as, again, it being within the building, I don't know if there's a building, like, again, the building codes might say something different. Typically outside our building, we're only looking for a 2-foot separation. So being about 10-ish feet down, they have that.
I guess fundamentally, no proverbial deal killers that you've seen in your, I know you haven't
Yeah.
reviewed everything from the response.
But no, I mean, if the board's comfortable with all the waivers and just like the tightness of how it's going to be, but again, being where it is, it's not any different than a lot of the buildings that are already out there. So.
Okay, thank you very much.
Attorney, do you have anything?
Well, Mark and Scott basically asked the questions I was thinking of, so I'm going to pass on to.
I am also concerned of the parking, internal parking, like, it's one way, I think.
Well, or I guess, good. So it did come up that to us it should be for two-way traffic. Like there's only one. I mean, there's 11 parking spaces, one for every unit. There's kind of one garage of 8 spaces, and then there's like 3 additional spaces kind of coming in from the side of the building that are just basically almost under like a it's just kind of like a carport more situation. Like you just would pull right in and just stop right there, where the other 8 are in more of a garage setting. So in that garage, there's only one way in and out of that garage. So when we made that comment, we were considering that two-way traffic. You could have somebody trying to leave if somebody's also trying to enter. So it is again fairly tight. What we're accustomed to seeing, or what is typical for the for a parking lot, just like outside here, you're typically looking for a 24-foot aisle width, etc. The regulations aren't specific about garages, unfortunately. Again, there might be some further things in the building code that we're not considering, but again, we typically stay away from, we're looking at more at the outside and site work more than like internal to the building.
Have you done underground parking garages in other towns?
Yes,
Are they one-way?
typically. But typically they're much larger, or not necessarily one way. I mean, would be like one way in, like, it could be the same in and out from that one location, but there'd just be more room to kind of get around, instead of being so congested.
Because there's an apartment down there also,
Correct.
in this
Yes,
parking area.
yes. There's one ground floor unit,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, that's all I have for now. Do you have anything, Tony?
Yes, thank you. What, you talk about typical of downtown, and I get that about coming up to property lines.
Yeah.
That's very typical. What, in all of this, we're in a historic district, is there anything about this that we should specifically zero in on, anything that bothers you particularly?
No. Again, most of them are pretty procedural, again, being downtown, they're not gonna have a setback. I mean, they're not gonna have the lot coverage they need. Those things aren't necessarily concerning. The one waiver they're asking for is like for a height, and it's like 1 foot, or it's for like the elevator.
For the elevator?
And it's for the elevator, they can't really, it's not like they could pull it down a foot, like it's the elevator. So there's nothing really that concerning about those waivers.
You see nothing from a safety perspective, either for pedestrians?
No.
Or for,
No.
thank you.
Anybody else have anything? Any other questions?
Follow up. In this garage, there are only gonna be 8 cars in there. So how often are we gonna see 2 cars moving at the same time? Maybe never.
Maybe never. But at those, peak time, people trying, a morning, typically traffic, again, we're not traffic engineers by trade, but typically you're looking at like a morning kind of peak and an afternoon peak, people leaving for work, people getting home from work. At those times, there could be multiple cars trying to move in, somewhat tight conditions at a similar time, but yeah, with only 8 units, we're not talking about, or somebody's gonna have to wait, you're gonna have to hold up a second for one of your neighbors, but, yeah.
Being downtown and being affordable, there's maybe even a chance that somebody won't have a car, which would be nice
Yes.
for everybody else.
And again, and it gets to that point, like they're already requesting a waiver just for the number of spots. I mean, then technically they should have more spots than they're even providing. So that is one, again, an additional waiver for that.
I just have a quick follow-up. On automobiles entering and exiting, and granted, I realize it's very few, but it's still something that needs to be asked. So when someone has to stop to let somebody in, are they sitting out in the street? Is that an issue? I mean, it's not a very busy street,
I
but
wouldn't
still a
s-
street that's used.
Yes, I wouldn't say, I believe it's off the top of my head, I don't know what street, the cross street.
Chancery.
Chancery, yeah, it's probably not a very typical busy street. And again, if you're idling there, it's probably only gonna be for a minute or two.
Thank you.
How are we handling Amazon, UPS, FedEx, all that kind of?
That's what we brought up the same point. They said that, again, they would just kind of queue like they do now on any delivery that's made on kind of Main Street in that downtown area. They must kind of pull off to the side or find a spot or do it quick,
I mean,
do
this
it
dwelling-
as quickly as they can.
This dwelling that's there now can't get a lot of Amazon, FedEx daily. I mean, might be once a day, maybe.
Yep.
But now we're gonna increase it big time.
Yeah, it's 11 units, yeah. And we also questioned just, it seems like the proposal is for all to be rental units. So not that you're anticipating tons of turnover, but people are gonna have to move in, move out, it being in a kind of tight, cramped spot, like where's that moving truck gonna sit? Things like that are something to consider. But again, the frequency of that's probably gonna be fairly infrequent. Assuming there's not tons of turnover, people moving in and out constantly.
Okay, you got anything else, Scott?
No.
Anybody else? Any last call on the questions up here before I go to the public? Anybody from the public? Laura, would you like to comment on anything?
Just a couple things. We filed a pretty lengthy response, so I don't know if the board had a chance to read all of it. We were kind of hoping to put this off until September 12th so we could deal with everything at once, but Anyway, so all the information that we've provided is in that response letter. Mr. Verselli did identify a pull-off zone for deliveries such as Amazon or FedEx on Chancery. If you look at the site plan, you can see that Chancery is actually a very wide road layout, and there is a sufficient room to pull off. That's, I think he measured it at 14 feet by 40 feet. So that's in that response. There's a sketch there showing where that is. The parking, you know, again, this is 8 spaces. It's really not a big parking area. We tried to show with planning board standards that, you know, 18 feet can be considered adequate for 2 vehicles to pass one another, and we're at 20. If you think about the width of the parking space, the width of a parking space is 9 feet. When you pull into a 9-foot parking space, you've got space on either side. So the average car is not 9 feet wide. So 9 times 2 is 18. Take off a couple of feet, you're maybe 15, 16 feet roughly for 2 vehicle widths if they had to pass one another, and we're at 20. So, you know, again, we're doing the best we can here to try and put the apartments downtown where people want them. I think we have to apply some flexibility. If you have your peer engineer and the planning board and Mr. Borselli saying that that width is adequate, then I think those are the standards to apply. And I would ask you to look at it that way. Again, it is only 8 units. Yes, people are just no different when you're in a parking garage anywhere in the city. You have to use extra caution. It's not like driving around an exterior parking lot where you can see things where you've got no roof. You know, you're driving much more cautiously, slowly. You're pulling in and out of a more confined space. So I just ask you to take that into account when you're reviewing our response. The parking or the stormwater plan, Mr. Berselli can comment a little bit more on that. So we did propose a plan. We can certainly revise that to simplify it if it's getting overcomplicated, and Mike can talk about that. I did want to correct one thing for the record. In one of my filings, Mr. Duffy had asked for a list of, you know, downtown parking areas and their restrictions. So I did file that list, and I put Town Hall Square, no overnight parking and no other restrictions. And I just noticed when I pulled in that there are spaces out front that say limited to Town Hall business only during the day. So I'm sorry about that. I can correct that, but I just wanted to make a note. I didn't realize that was there during the day, but of course the rest of it is open during the day. Other than that, I guess I'll turn it over to Mike. Do you want to just comment? A couple minutes.
Mike, you're going to touch on stormwater?
Yes.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. For the record, Mike Borselli, Falmouth Engineering, and I represent the applicant. Regarding the storm water, I think we unintentionally complicated this. We don't have a lot of experience, especially in Falmouth, with parking garages and how to treat drainage associated with parking garages. The site in question, as I'm sure you are all aware, is 100% impervious with no drainage whatsoever. There's a building with a roof and there's pavement. And over the last few, my office is nearby, over the last few storm events, I've gone over there and taken a peek at how the drainage patterns are, and all of the pavement and the roof drains off the site and finds its way to the municipal drainage system. We're contemplating, we understand we have to change the drainage system to meet plumbing code, as Beals and Thomas has indicated. We don't work with the plumbing code. We will work with the architect and the plumbing mechanical engineer to make sure we meet the code with regard to mixing stormwater and wastewater, as I learned tonight. But back to the drainage patterns on the site today. All runoff runs off-site onto Walker Street or Chancery into the municipal drainage system. When I said we overcomplicated it, we're actually reconsidering now dramatically reducing the drainage that we were proposing under the building and contemplating just simply letting the drainage patterns stay the way they are. Why not let the roof drain to roof leaders and drain to the ground and go where it's been going for decades, into the municipal system? In the letter that Laura submitted, there's commentary about roof runoff water quality versus pavement runoff water quality. Much different. The Massachusetts DEP standards for stormwater runoff recognize that roof runoff is cleaner cleaner stormwater. It doesn't collect hydrocarbons and other debris that collect on roads, oils, greases, trash, whatever. Salt, and that then gets flushed into the drainage system. We're gonna eliminate a huge amount of that by having a roof instead. So we're contemplating, we're gonna consider revising the plan, certainly for the plumbing code requirements, but we may come back to you with a much simpler system. If it's not broken, don't fix it. Let's just keep things the way they are. In fact, we're gonna improve it because we're gonna have a less bituminous concrete, less paved surface, cleaner effluent. So it's ironically, and it's an improvement if we build the building.
You're required, if you increase the roof area, to put this into dry wells, rain gardens, or whatever. We have a third option now. So I don't see that that's allowed.
Well, I'm not sure that I agree. We're not increasing the impervious surface. We have,
Roof area. It goes
Yes.
by roof area. If you increase the roof area, you have to put everything into dry wells or rain gardens. So I don't believe your
is that-
proposal is proper. Is that not correct?
I don't know that I know of a regulation that stipulates that. I know of a regulation, my understanding is if you increase impervious surfaces, therefore increase the volume of potential runoff from the site, you should mitigate. But we're not increasing the impervious surface, we're just changing it from pavement to roof.
Is it not?
I would defer to Matt to answer that. I thought I understood that stormwater, you can increase the rate that you currently have, but where you're undergoing this construction, I think they would expect you to manage the water within that parcel.
Well,
So,
I'm gonna just
but we
say
have an
again what I
expert here,
said.
so.
The drainage, the site is 100% covered with pavement or roof, and it's gonna continue to be 100% covered with pavement or roof.
But don't you, I understand what your statement is, but fundamentally, I take all that roof water and I push it out into the street. So I still have all of the hydrocarbon risk and everything today. You're not decreasing that risk. You're increasing the volume.
We're actually not changing the volume really at all. It's the same area of
You're
impervious.
channeling more rainwater through downspouts, so.
That's true, yes.
So the saturation is more concentrated.
Right, but the surface that the water
I'm
runs
with you on the
off.
surface.
The surface that the water runs off of is now less pavement and more roof.
I just,
Like I said, we're looking into it, we're not saying, we're considering that as an option.
yeah, I'd appreciate if you keep looking at both, so we better understand, at least for me, I'd like to better understand the optionality of the two.
Sure.
Thank you.
You will have to clean the water and the salt and all in the garage
Yes,
itself.
that, we have to do that in accordance with the plumbing code, absolutely.
Right.
Yep.
Frank, do you have anything?
No, but I was confused about the stormwater issue, and I'm quite pleased that you're gonna be looking into this and coming back with some clarification. That'd be very helpful, thank you.
Great. Tony, you good? Anybody else from the audience, or Laura, come on up.
Thank you.
I was just wondering if it might be helpful for Matt to comment on the alternative option and what his feeling is about that.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
He's the expert.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess with respect to that, we would like to see that recharge system remain. It's just, we'd want to see them separated though, that's, I think, you know. And ideally, yeah, the water's getting put in the ground and not just letting run off.
Wait, can I just get a clarification? I'm not quite sure I understand what you just said. You want it to go into a recharge, a sump,
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, they're proposing,
station basin?
well, there's no roof, like, so again, they're putting like some dry wells basically underneath the garage, because the building is essentially taking up the whole lot, so they don't have room for like a basin or other things. So they're gonna put it like under the building, which we think that's a good idea. In keeping with what they should, like, you know, if they had a bigger site, you'd want to see them have some kind of basin or something. So that's an effort of them trying to put the water, like to get the water recharged back in the ground instead of letting it just run off.
I'm quite sure if you increase the roof size, you have to put it into the ground.
I don't know if that's a local requirement. I don't know if that's a,
We've been requiring everybody all along. What's the engineering's comment on that?
I don't know if engineering's commented on that.
Got a peer review engineer.
Yeah. So anyway, anybody else have any further questions for Matt or Mike? Because this is just being continued till, do we have a date on that?
Do you have to go to 9/12 for the architect and then?
So we have a weird setup here, where we are continuing Walker Street to September 12, because we were able to get the peer architect to come that evening.
Okay.
So we are adding Walker Street on to the 12th, strictly for architecture, and then we will continue the regular part of the case to October 17th.
So the only thing that's going to be discussed on the 12th will be architectural design?
Correct, because you have two other cases that night.
So do we need a motion to continue to the 12th or to the other date?
Well, is there, I don't know, is there anything
Well,
further you
12.
want to discuss? or you just-
I have nothing else. Does anybody have anything else for tonight?
No. Looking forward to the architecture.
I know, I
review.
am too, definitely.
I guess, I'm sorry.
Go for it.
What I'm not sure I understand what we're going to do on the 12th. This is hopping all over the place. It seems to, how do we pull this all together? Because we've got to talk about sewer capacity, even Lowell's letter in that. I think we just covered parking. I think we covered parking. We got to cover the historic village situation. I think that's architecture. But where do we pull this all together so that we all in the audience understands where we might go with this, including the applicant? So we just pull this together in the end?
Yeah, I think, you know, like I said, we had a timing circumstance where we actually weren't able to get the peer architect to come tonight, and we were trying to not postpone it for a month, so we were able to sort of squeeze that in between in September, so that we could keep the case moving forward.
I just wanted to say, in my past experience, when we had an expert engineer doing peer review, that the issues are brought to you like they have been tonight, and then the two experts kind of talk and offline and sort of try to determine the best way to bring this back to you. And that's tended to work, you know, because they are the experts. I'm not. And so in terms of the drainage issues, you know, obviously we do have certain elements of that get reviewed as part of the building permit process, but our goal is to obviously try to make everybody happy here so that we have an approvable project. So we'll keep working on that offline, and hopefully can come, back with something that is agreeable to Hills and Thomas as to how it's presented. That would be our goal, anyway. And then as far as the architectural review goes, I mean, that's been delayed, so expect we'll hear from that architect. And then from what Noreen has told me, there might be another date available around the middle of October,
17th.
where we may then sort of bring back and fine tune what remaining issues there may be, or that you may have after we get through that phase. So hopefully by mid-October, we can wrap everything up.
Yeah, and it gives you the 30-day window to do the architecture, and these guys can get it together here. And
Yeah, right.
I think it's a good window.
And,
Yeah.
I mean, we'd like to obviously avoid multiple hearings, but when we're dealing with peer review experts, they have schedules too. So rather than just bumping this out to the middle of October, we're doing it kind of piecemeal, so it's a little different, but I think it can work. So our goal as the applicant would be by that mid-October date is to sort of really narrow down what remaining issues there are from you and from the experts, and hopefully have something by mid-October that you're satisfied with.
I
That
agree.
would be the goal.
Yeah, my concern is, as the sands of time fall through, that we aren't put in a position of making last-minute decisions. And how do we manage everybody's time? Yes, I realize everybody's got different schedules. I just don't want to see this board being put in a very bad position of having to make last-second choices. So I'm hoping that when we finally get the architectural peer review, that you folks will then somehow get both architects together and come up with something shortly thereafter. Is that your intent?
Well, that's typically how I've worked it in the past. So you hear from Mr. Bomer is the architect, and he's David Square. I've worked with him in the past. He's a lovely gentleman, and it's done a lot of work in Falmouth. So we'll hear from him, and if he has suggestions for things that we can or cannot do, we try to make changes that we can. Sometimes
ask
you
you
don't
a
reach
question
an
about that?
agreement. If we don't reach an agreement, then it comes back to the board, and it's up to the board to decide how it should proceed. But the goal is to always try to reach agreement with the experts,
May I ask
in
a
my
question about
opinion.
that, Madam Chair?
Go for it.
So, architects sometimes just don't agree with each other. I mean, they have their own styles, you know how it works.
Sure.
And you're gonna be doing all of this offline, out of the view of us. And in my mind, you're coming back because both architects somehow came to some conclusion based on the guidelines of the Historic Commission and the buildings within the historic district to come up with something that might work. So by the time you get back to us, either the two architects and the applicant have made some valuable decisions, or you're gonna come back to us, and then we have to make some valuable decisions. And, we're not architects. But, I mean, I can sit here and tell you what I'd like to suggest. I've been told this is probably not the appropriate time to do it. But this is not necessarily going to be an easy thing for two architects to come together on. But I'm hoping that they do. I would prefer not to make my own suggestions following the Historic Commission guidelines. And I don't want to do this last second because architectural design takes a long time. And this is a very odd building that really is going to take a lot of imagination to fix it to where it probably should be based on Historic Commission guidelines for design. I'm not going to talk about materials or anything of that nature. So I am concerned that we have enough time to do all of this, and I'm going to hope that the two architects can work together.
Well, I suppose it depends on the level of that review. I mean, the peer review that's been requested from the architect is to review the architecture, to review, you know, the codes that apply. Design is subjective. You know, this is a 40B project. I mean, strictly applying the Historical Commission guidelines to this project is not going to work. That's the bottom line. I can be frank about that. So if you're expecting plans to come back that strictly adhere to the Historical Commission guidelines, that's not what's going to be coming back.
No, I don't expect you to comply completely with the Historic Commission guidelines. What I am hoping that you will do is to look around the historic district, understand we have a very eclectic downtown. You know that, we all know that. But there are buildings right down the street on Walker Street, the Public Walker in Maine, that can apply to the roof line, for instance. But I certainly, as speaking one member, I don't expect you to follow exactly what Historic Commission requires, but this building needs a lot of work if you're asking us to waive that part of it.
Well, we did do quite a bit of work. I don't know if you've had a chance to
I have.
study the revised plans. So there's a number of things in play, and obviously I respect what you're saying. You know, would we love to be able to design a building that looks like other buildings in downtown Falmouth and still provide 11 apartments and keep it at 35 feet and under? I mean, these are the restrictions, and have parking on the lower level. So if you're suggesting that the applicant design a building that looks like other buildings on Main Street, then a couple of things need to happen. One is that you grant a higher height waiver. The other is that you cut the number of units, so you're reducing the number of available apartments in downtown Falmouth, which nobody wants because we are in a housing crisis and we need the apartments. So, or we don't provide parking on the lower level and people just go out and find their parking elsewhere. You know, so, and you've seen those kinds of projects that have come before you where the parking is insufficient or other factors are going into play. So it's not as if the architect who's doing the peer review is going to be giving, I think, given a blank slate of saying, here's an 11-unit 11-unit apartment building. We want you to design it to look like other buildings in downtown Falmouth with parking on the lower level and keep it at 3 stories and keep it at 35 feet. You know, those are the limitations. So I hear what you're saying, but I think that's the way this kind of has to be viewed in terms of what do you want to give up here, Mr. Petrucci? Do you want to give up building height? Do you want to give up parking? Do you want to give up the number of units? Because those would be the factors that go into what I think you're suggesting.
And make my last response into this. What I want is for all of us to continue to enjoy what we all enjoy about this community and its historic districts. And I'd like to have maybe just a little cooperation between all parties. There are roof lines that there's no question you can change. I'm not an architect. But I'm hoping that both architects and the applicant will just take heed that the historic district is very, very important to this community. You're part of this community. The applicant enjoys the fruits of this community, and I just hope you'll consider all of that going forward.
Absolutely, 100% agree. So what I'm getting at is that if you're looking for more design that's in keeping with what we see in downtown Falmouth, for example, would you support a height waiver? Would you support a height waiver above 35 feet to accomplish some of those roof lines? Those are the things that we don't, you know, we have to present design that try and meets within the regulations, so we reduce the number of waivers we ask of you. Because the more waivers we ask of you, the less probability we may get an approval for a project. If we understand that the board is flexible on the height and would allow or would be amenable to a waiver, then some of those roof lines may be achievable. But we've looked at them, and without a roof waiver, I'm not sure how we can do that.
Well, I cannot speak to that. That's something that you have to maybe ask for.
Isn't that in the Mr. Cod
The location is in the Mr. Cod, yes, but the Mr. Cod provision isn't this project isn't subject to the Mr. Cod provisions because we're not providing commercial use. So we've tried, like the other downtown apartment buildings, it's been designed to keep it at 35 feet because that, in my experience in the past, has been the will of the zoning board, try to keep that height at 35 feet in order to maintain that height limit through the downtown area. So
That's out the
again,
window now.
pardon me?
But that's out the window now.
Well, I guess that's why I'm saying that if the board is willing to grant some flexibility in that height waiver, then maybe some of those design elements can be different. But we have looked at them. We've tried to incorporate a design within those limitations. As I said, building height, parking on the first story, and providing 11 apartment units. So something has to give there.
Let's see what the peer review with the architect comes up with, and then we can take it
Yeah,
from
well, that's why
there.
I think maybe this step-by-step process can work, because we'll see what he has to say, and then the applicant will look at what he has to say and decide what may or may not can be done within those limitations, and maybe when the board hears that, they might say, well, you know, we can give you some flexibility.
Anybody else have any other questions, or can I have a motion to continue?
Motion to continue to
September 12th.
September 12th for the architect.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All
Okay.
opposed? No?
Thanks
All
very
set.
much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Mike. All right, we're moving on to, let's see, 85 Brick Kiln.
Before we start, I have a question. Does James Morse not being here have any impact on us? Well, he's one of the listed voting members.
Right,
Yes,
so
it
he's
is.
eligible to miss one meeting and sign that he's reviewed the information in the video, and he can continue to vote.
And that's his intention to do that? Okay, thank you. Ashley, is there a login for this?
It's right
Taped
on the
on.
front above.
Ashley, could you get me started? No, no, I don't have it yet.
Thanks, Ash.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Marioni for the applicant. I had intended to come in here tonight and show you new elevations on the buildings that we added dormers and a lot of other details to them. We also addressed a lot of the concerns that were brought up, such as laundry rooms, storage areas in the studio units. We made all the studio unit first floors handicap accessible, direct wheelchair ramp into the units off a front sidewalk, but with ramps onto the front sidewalk. We are going to add the bus shelter. We come up with a play area in the, we're going to fence in the middle of the park, the leaching field in the center, and use that as a play area and a gathering area. And all this we're doing while the peer review is finishing up his review of the first set of plans, which I assume any day now we're gonna see his review. And I'm very confident because of us using the same engineers and you using the same peer review person, that we're able to work out whatever it is that he comes up with. And we're hoping by the next meeting, we'll be back with all the items worked out, and you will get that report from the peer engineer. I'm really disappointed I can't get these pictures up here, but I will email them to you, to the board to distribute, but I think you're gonna like the new elevations. Any questions for me?
Any questions, anybody?
No, I'm happy he made some improvements, 'cause it didn't thrill me much before.
Did I hear this is changing ownership? It's going to be different ownership, and it's going to be rental? Or it's going to be
No,
home
that-
ownership now?
you're thinking of
That's a
Acapesca.
different proposal.
Different one? Okay. It's not this one.
And yes, you did hear that.
Okay. Go ahead, Tony.
So I just want to make sure I understand. You are working on new architectural plans? At this-
New elevations.
Yes, I'm sorry, elevations. And that will be emailed to the ZBA office for distribution to us before,
Yes, it will.
whatever the next hearing is.
Right, and any abutter who wants to email us, we'll be happy to share them with them as well.
When do we anticipate peer review?
Engineering for presumptively the next meeting,
The next meeting is when?
if it works with the peer.
It started, you should have
next
week.
Next week?
So we would be continuing this hearing to presumptively October 3rd.
When was this actually, how much time? Do you know when the drop dead is?
6 months from the filing,
Do you know, it was it July, June?
or from, excuse me, from the first hearing.
I thought it was from filing, no? From opening.
Opening.
Yeah.
We got plenty of time.
Yeah, okay.
Good.
So I guess, anybody have any questions then?
Nothing to ask.
Right, there is
Nothing to
nothing to
ask,
ask.
really.
Okay.
Any public?
Huh? Anybody from the public want to speak on this? Come on up.
Neil Geary, 77 Brick Hill. Up until 5 minutes ago, and I heard that, now we're going to put a playground in the center of the parking lot. I have two concerns with that. One, it's on top of the septic system, which is not the best place to put it. And number two is, the first meeting, that was where we intended to pile all the snow. Because then the question was, what are you going to do with the snow load? He said, well, we're going to put it in the middle of the parking lot. So if we got a playscape in the middle of the parking lot, where are we gonna put the snow? Because the only other space that's possible to put the snow would be in my side yard. And I could do without the drainage, because right now we flood as it is. And to add that much more snow load next to our property, which is the only other piece of property left that you could put the snow.
Well, the applicant can, in his, when he does the plan over, can show us a different area, or we can condition it to be trucked off-site.
Well, I'm just saying, there is no extra space in there. I
Right.
mean, every possible piece of blade of
40B.
grass has been stacked on top of, much as the previous one with where you have a paved lot and you're trying to build more on top of it. This is the same thing where you have a 4-acre lot, that 3 acres of it is usable. And then you're gonna tell me that now we're gonna put a playground in there, which I agree with 100%, because there's no backyards, there's no yards, there's no space for kids. And now we're gonna put the snow in the playground. Something's gotta give. It's just, we're trying to put 15 pounds of manure in a 10-pound bag, and it's just not gonna work.
Welcome to 40B land.
Well, I'm just saying, you know,
It is.
40B for what it is, I don't disagree with the premise. I disagree with trying to ram everything into one spot and basically building a crap hole, for lack of a better term. You know, we see sections of cities where they're dilapidated, they're packed in there, and it's horrible. And everybody that drives through it would look at it and say, man, this is horrible. But we're in this planning stages of this. How can we plan for a mess? And that's what it looks like we're doing with this 40B stuff. We're planning for desolate areas. And being abutting to it is not something I look forward to.
May I ask a question?
You can ask questions.
You have, yes, thank you. Other than where the playground is and the potential snow storage would go, do you have any other concern? I understand the density is over the top, I get that. Do you have any concerns about where you'd like to see the density go to? Obviously less, but.
Less, I mean,
But where? I mean, we're talking about is there something particular along the lot lines that you're concerned with regard to the type of building?
well, they can't build in the front, well, effectively the front acre. And that's when it was originally designed for single-family homes, that was designated as a non-buildable area. So then they ended up at the back end of the lot, which is basically you're down to 3 plus or minus acres back there, and you're trying to ram it all in. The only thing they can put in the front acre, which is where we're abutting to, is where we plan on putting all the drainage. So we're gonna take all the drainage from the entire site, the roofs, the parking lots, and the snow load, and park it next to my garage, which now in the last 3 weeks, 4 weeks, we've watched Brick Kiln Road flood, watched the storm drains overflow, watched the water run down the hill, and our backyard right now, and since we bought the place, turns into a pond. It's not fun, it's not, luckily, we're on a peninsula and it's all sand, and it eventually drains away. But the last thing I want to do is watch a concentrated load from 4 acres of property be added to the pond that I already have.
Thank you.
Are you the one with the big garage in the back?
Yes.
Nice house.
No, that's usually the response I get. The garage is like way bigger than the house,
Yeah,
but, you know.
God bless you. I'm jealous.
So-
The engineer heard your comment, so he can.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I stand. I mean, I've been down this road many times, and it just, like I say, there's no nice way of putting it. We're trying to pack too much onto a lot. And if you case of the one previous where you have an existing building that's on top of a paved lot that's paved 110%, that's fine. We're not there with this lot. So why are we trying to back ourselves into a corner from a design state? Let alone the fact that it just takes the overall view of Falmouth and makes it that much less.
Thanks.
You know, back to the Brockton by the Sea, you know, brought to you by 40B. Yeah, we just don't want to go there.
Thank you. I'm sure, Matt, you took that in. Come on up. We need your name and address, please.
Christina LeBlanc, 33 Sophie Lane, East Falmouth. I was reading, you guys are having, there's a 40B being built by the Jewish congregation on Sandwich Road, a little further down from that other unit that got approved. Their unit is 36 units on 4.5 acres. And they are putting the playground in, and that's great, and they're having 2-bedroom units and 3-bedroom units. I question, is there a amount of land that you have for the amount of units? Because this project is 40 units on 3+ acres. So you have something that's 4.5 acres, and they're putting everything in there with 36 units. So the concern is to downsize. Not, we all don't mind having it, it's just, we don't see 40 units in this little lot. To give what these kids need, the playground and everything else. So I just want to put that in comparison to what's going on near the Jewish congregation on Sandwich Road. That was it.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
I knew you were waiting.
I'm ready.
I know you are. Hi, Christine Geary, 77 Brick Kiln. I just want to make a point. Again, our neighbors, we're not against this 40B, but over the last couple of meetings I've been to here and watching on the Fabulous Falmouth page, watching on the Falmouth discussion page on Facebook, I have seen and encountered people even asking me, do I know of places where I can rent? I had my landlord passed away and they sold the house. And they're looking for 2 bedrooms. They're looking for 3 bedrooms. They have kids, a single mom, and it goes back to your project plan that you have that goes for the 40Bs, is I've seen a lot of that. I'm not seeing such a high need, and I'm gonna bring it up again, for all of these studio apartments. But just recently, like I said, a woman had her landlord pass away, the house got sold, and now she's homeless, basically, without a place to live, and has 2 kids, a boy and a girl, who each need their own bedroom. So I just want to put that out there again and just let you know that, I'm not against it, and I really thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
So it might be helpful for the board and for the audience. The town did produce a housing production plan. They did hire an outside consultant to update that plan after 5 years of time. And it might be worth just taking a glance at, because they actually did a deep dive into the town's needs, as opposed to, one person coming in and saying, this is what I want. So that may be helpful for some additional information.
Do I have to go back up there? Do I have to go back up there?
Oh, if you want to talk more, yeah. Thanks, sorry.
Yeah. I just wanted to add to that I did submit that. I did see the research that was put into that, and that was extensive. And my point was, you had 2 points of depletion, and it was by age demographics. And one of them was children, anything under 18, any child under 18. That was a deep, deep decline. And then you had a severe decline in people who were 25 to 44. So that's what I'm pointing out, is when we're looking at these projects, we should really be focusing on that document and saying, does over 50% of the units, which is 22 studio apartments, address this? And again, on the last page of that, I think it was you can check it out too, page 86, it says, you have a deep concern about what the future of Falmouth looks like if this trend continues. So I'm just going to leave you with that.
Yeah.
But thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Come on up.
Hi, Jennifer Gleason, 23 Sophie Lane. So we're gonna add 80 cars. You guys just approved the place on Sandwich Road for 300 apartments. That's give or take 6 additional cars. And then, as Christina was saying, you are looking at the other one for 30, that's another 60 cars. What do you guys plan on doing about the intersection at Brick Hill Road and Sandwich Road? because it already takes a half an hour to get from Gifford Street to Sandwich Road. And from Oxbow, you're gonna have everyone coming that way too, from Brick Hill, from Oxbow onto Brick Hill. What does the town plan on doing about the traffic flow? Because there's no way to extend the road, to widen the road, because there are houses and another apartment complex that's been there a while, but there's no way to extend the road. You didn't want the Elks in there because you were concerned about the traffic. Now you guys are adding 500 more cars every single day. At least the Elks were Thursday, Friday, Saturday, maybe Sunday. So I'd like to know what the town plans on doing with the traffic pattern. Since you're allowing all of these people to build all of these apartments and have all these cars. There's no sidewalks on Sandwich Road. So people can't even walk to town without getting run over. Anything?
Do you want to respond?
There is
Madam
a sidewalk
Chair?
on Sandwich Road
From Brick Hill to,
from Brick Hill to 28.
but what about the rest of it?
Well, we
For the people for
condition,
that 300,
we condition the sidewalk for that.
I mean, what are you gonna do with the lights? Are you gonna make the lights right and, left turn only with a solid green one way? I mean, how is that gonna?
DPW has a wish list.
Well, you're adding almost 500 more cars,
It's not falling on deaf ears.
but you're
there's
approving
only-
all of these houses, all of these apartments. It has a big factor on it.
As I say, we conditioned the sidewalk.
I don't know if you don't understand the 40B process.
But that should be included with them doing the traffic and adding
It's.
sidewalks,
if it-
bus
if it
routes.
was a
There's a lot
Dunkin'
that should be
Donuts,
included.
we could do it. It's a 40B. We had a hard enough time conditioning a sidewalk. It was a fight.
And this is the problem with the system. It's a big problem with the system.
It is.
It's not us.
You guys don't have a say. They want you to go through all of this hoopla, jump through hoops, and theoretically, it doesn't matter what you guys say. It has to be approved.
No.
No.
Tony, you can help.
I'm not sure we're supposed to respond to this, but 40B really puts the zoning board of appeals in a very, very small
Yep.
box. And we don't always get our way, but the applicant often gets their way. Or if we condition it in a way that they want to appeal it to the Housing Appeals Committee of Court, we generally lose. So what we try to do is find some compromises in this process, get as much as we can with working with the applicant. And this traffic issue, it's a tremendously big issue in town.
It is, it's a huge,
We
you
don't
can't get
have-
around, you can't get around town.
We don't have anything to say, we have very little to say.
I mean, I live literally, what, a mile and a half from Stop and Shop? And in the summer, it's a half an hour ride.
It's the most dangerous stretch of road
It
on
is.
Cape Cod, by far.
It's
I mean,
ridiculous.
they did a study for 15 months, and from Jones Road to Fresh Pond Road, there's 108 more accidents in that period of time than any other road on Cape Cod.
So how do we fix it, and how do we add it to the, you're adding all these homes, all these places for people to live, and then nobody can move around.
Well, we're at our 10%, so we have a little more latitude. But
Yes.
honestly,
We are at State Harbor, we thought we did the State Harbor rule,
Yes.
Not efficient.
Not for this.
we were able to have a little more.
not for
Not,
this one.
not for this
case.
case.
Not this
was
case.
filed before.
They got-
Before, okay.
Right.
They're
We
in
still
the
have a
hopper, so
few
to
out
speak.
there floating around, like this one. We have a few more that we still have no control over. But anyone that files from today or, this past couple of weeks, it gives us an ability to get what we want. We could ask for less units or less density or less height or whatever. We have more say.
Okay, so
But this case, we do not.
The grandfather then before,
Yes.
okay.
My next,
What about this house what about the
Wait,
house in-
hold on, I shouldn't even be talking to you. Let her finish and then you can come on.
Sorry, John.
I apologize.
my next question is.
It's my fault,
My
sorry.
next question is, when they're building and they change the topography of the land, like I said at the last meeting, I already take all the water on from Sophie Lane. I wanna make sure that I'm not gonna take on any more water from their property. Half my yard is drainage. Because back in the day, they probably shook someone's hand and said, hey, instead of putting it in the ground, which was how it was supposed to be, they decided to take my property and use it for drainage. I don't wanna be responsible
No.
when a kid comes in my backyard and drowns after, because we know kids, or gets hurt, and the people in these apartments sue me because their kid is playing in my yard. So I wanna make sure that there's some sort of fencing, something that's gonna keep them out of this drainage area. Most of my yard is fenced in, but I'm not gonna waste my money fencing in an area that
Well,
I can't even use.
you're uphill from this project.
Well, but when they
Well,
change,
the water isn't gonna
if they
flow
change
uphill.
the topography of it, it may end up flowing down, depending on how they do the back. So I wanna make sure, but I also wanna make sure that the kids aren't gonna be playing down there, so it should be fenced off.
No,
And not at my expense.
fencing something we can kind of ask for. And the
Okay.
engineer is listening to everything you're saying as far as drainage goes,
Okay.
so.
You might want to bring us some pictures with the, I'm familiar where you live, with the road that's all, but I mean, when it's filled at its,
The
highest
water is
point.
like a river when it comes down in
well,
the
you
storm.
might want to bring us some evidence of that.
Okay,
It might benefit you.
okay, all right, Jennifer.
Thanks.
Oh, what?
Show them the picture of your area.
See if you
Oh, in my
can
yard?
email it to the,
Submit it.
email
We
it.
can take some
Yeah,
pictures?
email it.
Okay.
That'd be great for us to have.
Okay. Yep, well, I'll have to get your email, because I don't know your.
Yeah.
Okay,
Email it
perfect.
and then we'll all have a copy of it.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Awesome, thank you so much.
Yep.
Thank you.
Christina Lamar, I just wanted to ask, you had mentioned House of, the appeals process, because you're saying that, you know, it's before the safe harbor. They come in and they don't want to downsize the amount of units, and there's another step that goes in appeals, and you guys say you usually lose. Where's that appeals? Are we able to attend that? Get involved in that?
No, it's in Boston.
It's in Boston.
Housing, yeah.
You, yes.
They can attend.
You can appeal. I mean, the abutters, if we make a decision, when we write a decision, the applicant can appeal if they don't like it, even for one thing, in that, such as a sidewalk, or if they just don't like what we said.
Okay,
But the abutters can also appeal.
okay.
It does cost money and time, but you can also appeal. You're not totally defenseless as a community.
Okay.
We just have to work within very strict guidelines that Massachusetts Housing and the department, I can't remember what the name of the department is.
EOHLC.
Thank you. But it is a very difficult on this board, and we're the only board that can do this in town. But
As abutters, we have a right to appeal.
you have
We
a
could
right to
go-
appeal.
And the appeal process is something that is started now or after they file and they
After.
go to the next step?
And
It
once
would-
we make, I'm sorry.
After the board's decision.
After the board's
Right.
decision?
So that being said, the intent for the use of this current period of time is for the applicant to hear what the concerns are of the neighborhood and to try and mitigate those.
Okay.
So for example, we intend that they not shed their stormwater off their site, that they keep it on. So as they do construction and they do work on their drainage and their grading, they can't grade so that their water goes onto your lot.
Okay.
So you will have some protections there. And, you know, I know folks were interested and concerned about cars. I think everybody realizes that Falmouth, as it stands today, has traffic issues, right? Particularly in the summer when you have lots more residents who are visiting you, right? And so the state, as a zoomed-out agency, this is a state permit that the board grants, but state rules, right? And so what they would identify is that the traffic that's added by these developments is not in and of itself creating a problem. The town may have areas where traffic is already a greater concern. So what the state would look at is the town and maybe possibly what the state would have to have some type of partnership to make improvements, but that we cannot tell a developer, you can't develop because there's an existing traffic issue.
Okay.
So we have to all try to work cooperatively so that we can get the housing, so that there are more options for various residents.
Okay. Things, because I know, I'm like.
Not easy to
It's a
take in.
seasonal place, so the, you know, so the traffic's just gonna be seasonal year-round, but when the season comes in, it's gonna be tenfold. So somehow, that needs to be brought to the attention of the state when that time happens. Okay, I'm getting that.
It's not easy to learn, not easy to learn.
But the one other question I had was the land. Is there restrictions on how much can be put on a lot of land? Because the 4.5 acres versus 3.2 with having more units versus less units, I'm mystified by
No
that.
restrictions, no.
No
They
restrictions?
they just show a plan and,
Land doesn't matter.
Yep.
Okay. All right, thank you, guys.
thanks.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Come on up, Nick.
Just like to address some of the comments that were made. We're listening, we hear them. Whatever we can do, we will do. There will be a snow storage plan that gets submitted to the peer review. A lot of it was on the play area, it probably still will be, but there'll be other areas. It's good to have on record people that already have water flowing onto their property, because our responsibility is to make sure that no more flows onto their property than what's going there now, and no faster than it's going there now. I think, and we find oftentimes what we do helps those problems, because there are areas of our site that are a problem as well. So I think that the concern and the fear that we'll make it worse is maybe unfounded, but there's no way to tell until we're finished. So, but we're listening, we'll address what we can.
We had one abutter ask for fencing, which is
I'm sorry,
we had one abutter ask for fencing,
We-
so
we
that's
have-
something to think
we
about
will
too.
listen to anybody that wants to talk to us about buffering, fencing, privacy issues. We had a site meeting to talk about that, and we'll talk about it again. But we're going to be submitting, when the final site plans have been reviewed, we'll then overlay that onto the final landscape plan, which will include the buffering we think is needed, and we'll listen to whatever they think is needed. If we agree, we'll add that as well.
That sounds great, thank
So,
you.
and one other thing I want to add too, the Boston Foundation does a report every year called the Housing Report Card. Now, it includes everything north of the Cape and east of Worcester. But in that report card, they point out that 25% of the households in Massachusetts have one person living in them. And that's what I think Noreen was saying in the housing needs plan. It was addressing that, because I think the same thing applies on Cape Cod. It might not be 25%, it might be 20% or 22%, but no one's addressing that type of housing. And also, the Senior Center put out an email this week saying that as of September 1st, if you're not a resident or a taxpayer in Falmouth, you will no longer be able to use the Senior Center. The reason being is 7,600 seniors in Falmouth, and more than half of them have signed up to use the Senior Center, and a lot of residents aren't getting in on the programs because there's so many people using it. So there's that many seniors in Falmouth that could use maybe the handicap units, studios, if they're single-person households also. So,
Okay.
just some comments I wanted to make.
Thank you.
Keep
the line of communication open with the abutters.
Yeah,
Oh, it's wide open,
always important.
Okay,
you know,
appreciate that.
both by phone or email, either one.
Thank you.
So we're continuing this. Do you have a,
Any other issues the board wants to discuss? Other than that, we are calendaring this for October 3rd.
Motion to continue to October 3rd.
Second.
we have a motion?
Yeah.
And a second?
Did you have any other items that you wanted to?
Yeah, anybody have anything else for, for Matt?
I'm very, this is in the Great Pond Coastal Overlay District, and as such, 247.2 directs what needs to happen in that district with regard to wastewater treatment. Unfortunately, this is another one of the bylaws that is written not as well as it should be in 7.2B, paragraph 2, subparagraph A, subdivisions of more than 5 lots of more than 5 acres. This is one lot with many, many units that normally would have been subdivided into different lots. I'd like to know what the parameters would be for us as a board to consider how this application will fit into the Coastal Pond Overlay District and how wastewater treatment would be treated given that. So even though it's one lot and it says subdivisions of more than 5 lots or more than 5 acres, I'd like this to be looked, if we can, look at this as, you know, as many, many units.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Noreen, the Board of Health is coming out to address questions on the 12th of September.
So we have invited the agent from the Board of Health to come address some general septic issues for the board.
All right, we had a motion and a second. Up here, is everybody all set? Yep. All set, Tony? Thank you. All those in favor of the continuation?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? None. Thank you. Thanks, guys, for coming out.
Can I submit
Thank you, Matt.
a change to you now, or do I have to come back tomorrow? Locust
All right, moving along.
Yeah, I think it's going to be done on a case basis.
I'd like it to be heard this way if I could, and if they want to have us do it separately, then they can tell us.
Yeah, I'll check with town council.
Or can I submit that to you now and you stamp it in the mail?
Well, not on TV.
Yes.
Should we do it on TV?
You know, and I'm working on that
I think
letter.
we should wait.
I figured I had till September.
That's
I'll
him.
get that letter.
Watch this.
Together to that capacity.
Okay.
I'll get that to you by the first of the week. Thank you.
Yeah.
Voting the minutes?
Noreen, are we doing these minutes?
We are voting minutes for August 8th.
You sent those by email to us, correct?
I did.
And I read them. so
I did too, yeah.
I would move August 8th, approval of the minutes.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None? Zoning administrator update.
Where we're meeting weekly, I don't have much to offer you.
We had last Thursday off now. Woo!
It's 2 this year.
Second one, yeah. I think we have one in the spring, maybe,
I
A
feel
day
it's
off?
spoiled.
a Thursday off.
We're working on it.
Anyway. All right, we're moving along. And board discussion. We have a new member. Welcome.
We'll wait to roast them.
We'll wait for this, yeah. We'll keep it on the down low till the next meeting. Board updates? Jim will be back next meeting, I assume. And future agenda items. There he is. Our future agenda item is here. Anything else for future agenda items? You wanted to put, oh, you're putting it on the workshop?
Yes.
Okay. That's it. So I think we're all set.
September 5th, next meeting?
September 5th is
6
the next
o'clock?
meeting at 6 PM.
6 o'clock?
Yeah,
Why
6
did I
o'clock,
think we went
Mark?
back to 6:30?
I don't know.
Didn't we have?
So our
six-
next meeting, September 5th at
Yeah,
6?
last week was 6:30, wasn't it?
Mark,
year it was.
can you make a motion to adjourn for me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Please.
Be more than happy to.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Adjourned.